A new report has found that 4 in 5 people born between 1997 and 2012, that people aged between, that's 27 and 12 and 27, believe that the drug should either be legal without any restrictions or available through licensed shops. Now, this is compared to less than half of the older generation, so this is the baby boomers, who think that cannabis should be legally available in licensed shops like the state-required dispensaries in America. So we're asking, are Gen Z youngsters onto something here, or are boomers actually right to, I suppose, leave things the way they are? Henry, what do you think about this one?
I think the boomers are stuck in their ways. I'm Generation X, so just after the boomers, so born after 1964, right? Yeah, you're a boomer, aren't you? Just about. Are you?
By 11 days.
By 11
Thank you very
days,
much
okay.
for pointing it out, Henry.
And maybe
that's not a bad thing. You made the cut. That's how you want to phrase that.
Yeah, I mean, the younger people are probably looking at the state of things as they are and what we have done in history. The war on drugs is never going to be won. Clearly, we do have to try and clamp down on the more vicious drugs that have come in from the States, from China, from elsewhere, that can really damage individuals and society. But when it comes to cannabis, even though excessive use of it can be harmful, like excessive use of alcohol can be very harmful, younger people are looking at their own experiences, and a significant percentage of 15 to 24-year-olds, about 16%, are using cannabis. They look at the amount of money we spend, you might say waste, on trying to police cannabis. It's millions of police hours a year. There's about 2,000 people in prison at the moment, 1,600 for cannabis-related offences. And they're thinking, well, the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And they're looking at what's happening in the States, in Germany, in Portugal, in the Netherlands, and saying, perhaps we need to look at doing things differently.
Yeah, I mean, our courts are full, our prisons are full, and we need the money, Dawn. Is that a sensible decision?
You could have done this survey any decade since the 1960s, to be honest with you. Young people are more in favour of legalising cannabis and other drugs rather than the older generation. I mean, nothing has changed with this one. I will just say that it is actually illegal in the Netherlands. I mean, I know everyone thinks going to Amsterdam, you can do whatever you want in the coffee shops, and it is tolerated, but it's technically still illegal. Legalising it makes me nervous, because I think if you legalise something so they can just pop to the corner shop on the high street and buy some cannabis, I think it might encourage more people to try it. Most people take cannabis by smoking. It therefore encourages more people to smoke, which is not a good thing. And although, they say it can be a gateway drug, not everyone who takes cannabis is going to go on to take harder drugs, but some people do. And, I've had two people in my life, one who developed a severe psychosis by smoking cannabis, and another one who sadly lost their lives after it did lead on to being a gateway drug. So, I'm not going to dictate how people live their lives. If you want to use cannabis recreationally, I use wine recreationally, as you might have noticed.
Wine is legal, though.
Wine is legal, but there are people that would argue that if you invented wine now and alcohol now, it would be in the same category as cannabis. And there is that argument. Completely different debate.
I hate to jump on what you said there, Dawn, about the gateway drug theory, right? I understand what you're saying, and I can see why people would think, OK, you start with cannabis, then you're on cocaine, heroin.
I'm not saying everybody does that, but it does happen.
But one of the reasons
people that are on heroin probably started on cannabis.
Or even cigarettes, but initially, didn't they? Because you smoke, and it's the action of smoking using the same muscles. But when you think about the gateway nature of this, maybe one of the reasons why is when you go to a person for cannabis, the only people who can sell it to you are people who are involved in crime in the drugs industry. What are they also selling? Probably heroin, selling brown, selling cocaine, selling crack.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why it's a gateway drug.
Katie from Kent, what do you think? Should cannabis be legalised, or should we keep things the way they are?
I am somebody who has really suffered extremely badly psychosis, as was just mentioned. I was 18, long-term usage, I'm talking like 6 months of smoking it. And I went into extreme psychosis 3 times, 3 different episodes. And that was because I didn't listen. Everyone said it can't be cannabis. It's not cannabis. She must have taken something else. And I didn't. It was cannabis. But sadly, there's a lot of other things. There's Skunk, I got drawn into Skunk and other kind of hybrids of cannabis. And I think that's where the real dangerous ground is, and that's what happened to me.
Katie, your tale's really quite scary. When did you start smoking skunk?
So I'm 48 now, so I'm going back to when I was 18. I had a mental health review yesterday, and I just said, what's the deal at the moment? And basically, there are a lot of young men, particularly right now, that are in psychosis and they can't get them out of psychosis. So I think that's the problem. I was really lucky to have the right healthcare teams around me at that age. The drugs now are very different to help, but I was one of the lucky ones. There's people that don't come out of psychosis.
Now, Katie, you'll know far more about this than me, but I have been told that the reason that people can get psychosis is because of things that drug dealers lace the cannabis with to make them cheaper for them and so that they get bigger profit margins. Now, if they were made legal, we could control the quality of the cannabis. Do you think that would reduce the number of psychosis episodes that people would get, or the number of people that would get it?
Possibly. I don't know the chemistry of the brain and how it works for individuals. It could have been skunk that affected me. It could have just been long-term uses of cannabis. I think that's, it's the long-term usage that is the problem.
And that's what I wanted to get to the bottom. You said 6 months there, but how long before you started using cannabis, and at what age were you when you started to when you had your first episode? I think you mentioned it was 18.
So I was 18. I was head girl at school. Everything was great. I smoked cannabis for 6 months after my A-levels. I went travelling to Australia with my boyfriend, and I disappeared in Australia for 2 full days. And I was in full-blown psychosis, and I'd had no symptoms before that at all. Nothing.
Katie, that is incredibly scary. And also 18 is an interesting age to start, because, Henry, if this was to be legalised, we would probably make the age the same as alcohol, which would be 18. And that doesn't seem to have reduced the risk, at least for Katie, of psychosis.
Well, in Katie's situation, and you made a very important point when you said that if it was licensed and controlled and dispensed through particular outlets, like it is in, say, the Netherlands or in Germany, then maybe you would put fewer people at 18 at risk. Remember, at 18, it's still a teenage brain, it's not fully developed, and people will try risks. I mean, cannabis has been smoked by human beings since something like 2600 BC in Eastern Tibet and modern-day China. So there's always going to be a demand. The question is, what do you do about suppressing that demand? You give people other things to be interested in. You give people full and engaging lives. There are particular categories of young people who are attracted to this kind of lifestyle because there might be an emptiness in I've never been attracted to cannabis or taking drugs of any kind because I live a full life. I've got friends. I'm engaged in lots of different things. I mean, I'm an exercise junkie like you.
Yeah.
So I get my dopamine from other things. But there are lots of people who, at particular times in their lives, are feeling down, feeling depressed, or just want to get high, like Afro Man, that song. I want to get high. Remember that song? And that speaks to a significant percentage of the population out there. That's never going to go away. But we need to try to suppress the desire, suppress the need to go for those drugs.
And you think legalising it would suppress the desire?
To a degree, because one of the things that attracts people is the fact that it is
I think legalising would encourage the desire.
So?
I think people that would not dream of hanging around some of the dodgy areas where you have to go to buy drugs would then think, okay, it's fine. I can just pop down to the corner shop if I'm 18, and this is what the actual story is.
The same way we feel about alcohol, I suppose.
Yeah, well,
cigarettes
I mean, that's
in today's society. Katie, thank you so much for your call and sharing that with us. Nicola from South Lanarkshire, do you think we should legalise cannabis?
Well, I think that we should legalise cannabis. I just moved back about a year and a half ago from Colorado. I was there for 6 years, and they were the first place to legalise cannabis recreationally over the age of 21. During the pandemic, it was actually kept open as an essential business, and I think that it's always been here, It's just the fact that you don't know what you're getting. Like, for instance, since I've been back, you just don't know what you're getting, and sometimes it can be like a strain that doesn't work well with you. Like, for instance, I could go into one of the dispensaries there and all the workers have been vetted out. They have to train to get their badges and things, and everything is basically on the packaging, and they also like tell you about the different strains. So for instance, I like a Camin strain, which is like it's got limonene in it, so the same as what lavender has in it. So I don't like sativas, which make me feel really racy. So I have mental health issues, and being over there and knowing what worked well for me and it was there for me to get was good. Being here, it's not.
It's not good now. Can I ask, did the mental health issues, were they there before you tried the cannabis? I think a lot of people will be wondering that at home.
Yes, so I've had ADHD ever since I was a child,
Got you.
It really helped me, honestly, like learn myself and things in my quiet moments and get into more of my creative things. And
I do wonder whether
that.
the argument that we'll have more control over the quality and what's in it works when it comes to a drug like cannabis, because then that's a slippery slope. Where does that stop? People are taking heroin. Do we sell that legally so we know what's in it and people aren't going to die?
No, not at all. Like, people say that cannabis is a gateway drug. I never started smoking it till I was 25. I think it was alcohol was my gateway one because it was so accessible, and I feel like it
that's maybe an argument to ban alcohol then, Nicola, for some people.
Yeah, I don't think banning anything is like the way to go, because there's always going to be people who abuse things, but there's going to be people who are actually using it to like relax or for different pain things, because we all have cannabinoid receptors in our brain, every living thing. And like was said before, it's been smoked for thousands of years, so there's a reason there.
Okay, cannabis is legal
Thank
in
you.
this country for medical issues now.
Yes.
There are some medical conditions where you can be prescribed cannabis. Epilepsy is one, and if you're undergoing chemotherapy, you can, there are cases where you can legally take cannabis.
It is very hard to access.
It is
so
very
a lot
hard
of
to
people
access.
that would use cannabis for medical reasons would really like it to be legalised, so they don't have to go through the strenuous checks and all the red tape.
We'll have to go over to Amsterdam to get it, as some people did.
Where it's still illegal.
Nicola, thank you for your call. Sharon from Lancashire, what's your view when it comes to cannabis?
Hi. Hello. Thank you for letting me on the show. I don't think it should be legalised. My son at 17 was an apprentice. He had a very full life. He enjoyed going out with his friends. He was a fitness coach. That's what his apprenticeship was in. He tried cannabis a few times, smoked it for a few months, and then got psychosis. Became very, very ill, suffered mental health issues for over a year, had to be medicated, and was on medication for up to 7 years before he's completely off everything now and back into his life. But it took a long time and a lot of support from family as well.
How old is he now? Sorry, Sharon.
He was 27 a couple of weeks ago.
So that's nearly 10 years from when it all started to get him back into a sort of normal life. And the other lady we spoke to was like 30 years before she started to feel, before she's sort of back to normal. Henry, these are quite scary stories, and I think parents all across the country will be terrified that their children start smoking.
I fully understand, and I appreciate what you said, Sharon. And for you, and it could be that your doctors have backed this, or the psychiatrist, your son's psychiatrist, has agreed that it was the cannabis that caused a psychosis. I used to do a lot of work in the mental health field. I used to be a mental health act manager at one of the big hospitals in South London. And one of the psychiatrists told me that even though there's this debate about cannabis psychosis, the number one driver of psychosis and some of the mental health problems that young people have is thwarted ambition. Because here we are in a country where it's free, there's no Taliban telling you what you can and can't do, and everybody wants to have a good, successful life. But one of the biggest problems is frustration And that's what leads people down the path of drugs, whether it's cannabis, alcohol, etc.
At the moment, we technically could have a perfect storm then. We've got the impact of social media, which is increasing that separation between what you expect your life to be like and what it is actually like, and then throw in cannabis to that mix, and then you've got a terrible perfect storm.
I'm sorry, I think that's lighting a bonfire. I really do.
But the cannabis, but they can get it anyway. I mean, was it 40% of people?
Yes, but if you're adding an ingredient that could encourage it or could...
No, but I mean, you'd be having the balance between the CBD and the THC, which isn't there in the rock skunk weed that people are getting on the streets. At least it'd be a degree of control.
If you seriously think that allowing people to buy cannabis, a controlled type of cannabis, legally on the high street will put drug dealers out of business, I think you don't understand how drug dealers work.
I think I do understand how they work, but it's about the consumer as well and what they're more likely to be attracted to, something that they think is safe. You know, for example, we've got cigarettes out there that people can smoke legally and that are licensed, and the kind of underground cigarettes that people can get. Most people that I know who smoke are still going for the legal ones with the massive tax because they think it's safer, they know what's in it,
but a
and
lot
they
of people
smoke
are still going for illegal ones as well.
Because they're cheap.
Sharon, thank you very much for sharing that story, and I'm glad to hear your son's doing well. Jenny from Norwich, what's your view when it comes to cannabis? Should we legalise it? Jenny? Oh, Jenny, we're going to try and get you back. Graham from Glasgow. Legalising cannabis, do you think this is a good idea?
Yeah, morning. I do believe it's a good idea. I think it saves lives. It'll be controlled. It'll not be the dealers just put stuff in it to make you go for something else to get you addicted.
But do you think it would decrease? Do you think legalising it would decrease the amount of people taking it or increase the number of people?
It'll probably decrease it because then it takes the rebellion effort out of it. No, look at me. I'm taking drugs now.
I don't know, is that how people feel when they're taking it? I don't know, Graham, perhaps you're right. Although that doesn't sound quite as cool as perhaps they think they are. Graham, thank you very much for your call. So you would vote for legalising it. Jenny from Norwich, we've got you back now. How would you feel about legalising cannabis?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Hello, my love. Hi to all three of you. I'm all for legalising it. I was saying to a member of your staff that I am a below knee amputee. I am on gabapentin to control phantom pain, which I appreciate that cannabis isn't going to control. But I was also on cocodamol, which is obviously a manufactured opiate. And at one point, I actually became really dependent on it. Yeah. And it sort of it boggles my mind that I'm allowed to get addicted to an opiate, but something that's natural, if it was controlled and regulated properly, it's not legal, and you're constantly getting fined. And I just sort of think, well, surely, if you're controlling it and it's and it's regulated properly, surely that's got to be better for everybody.
Jenny, I don't want to pry and get you into trouble, but have you ever tried cannabis for your phantom pain?
No, I haven't for phantom pain. I'm not going to lie. I have tried cannabis in the past, but in all honesty, I really don't like being high. I absolutely hate it.
I wonder whether the element that makes you feel high could be taken out in some way. I know that it can be taken out of it. That's how they use medical cannabis. But I wonder whether that medical cannabis helps for pain as well as helps with issues like epilepsy. I don't know about that. But if it does, then maybe it's something that you could speak to your GP about and see whether you could get some help for them. But I take your point that, we are prescribed drugs that we can get addicted to anyway that are synthetic and man-made. So why not be more liberal with a drug that is potentially, that is more natural? Jenny, sorry, you want to make another point?
Yeah, so that's the thing though. You can't get addicted physically to cannabis. Yes, you can psychologically, but again, if you can control it, then you're going to take a lot of that out. And
I think that's splitting hairs. I think you can get addicted, whether it's mentally or physically, which causes problems of its own. But Jenny, I totally take your point. Thank you so much for calling. Thanks for all your calls on this.